Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today once again my team career mode in season 2, and it is qualifying at Belgium today. Circuit des Spa Francorchamps, lovely classic track, and hopefully it'll be a qualifying to remember for ourselves. But of course, last time out it was the Hungarian Grand Prix race. If you guys haven't watched that, click off the video now if you want to watch it before I give you some spoilers. But it was a very interesting race for ourselves, I have to say. Certainly a race of two halves. It went from full wet to slick conditions. We had all three compounds of tyres. We had the inters, of course, in the middle between the wets and then, of course, slick tyres. So really got an interesting race, and surprisingly our pace was with the wet tyres and the intermediate tyres. In fact, of course, we decided to go wets to inters. Others decided to go wets to inters to inters. We decided to go wet to inters and then, of course, onto slicks. As I've said, others went wet, inters, inters, slicks. And actually, because we did one less pit stop, we were leading the race ahead of Lewis Hamilton and, of course, Sergio Perez before we pitted to the slicks, and it went downhill from there. We pitted a lap earlier than those guys, dropped down to P3. We then lost out to Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc. That was then quickly followed by, where is he? Yeah, Carlos Sainz. But before him, Max Verstappen. We actually got overtaken by Carlos Sainz first, I do believe, then Verstappen managed to go and get past him. We ended up P7, but overall, at one of my weakest tracks, that is a very decent result for ourselves. The winner, though, was Lewis Hamilton. His first win of the season. Hasn't had many. His first win since Imola. It's been a win long due and a fantastic performance from him. Great quali to get P1. Teammate Bottas is going to be a little bit frustrated. Was leading the Grand Prix until he had a mechanical failure, and that's pretty much taken him out of the championship fight. But Hamilton's win, maybe launching a late charge to get into the mix at the top, but still on just 76 points is way behind ourselves. 44 points behind us with 3 rounds to go. He's pretty much out of it. Perez managed to get a P2. Still yet to take a win yet this season, but his third P2 to add to his lovely collection of podiums. Now sits just 16 points behind us with 3 races to go. It really is turning into a season of two halves. Of course, with Belgium being a weaker track for me and probably a stronger track for those cars around us in the R&D, I wouldn't be surprised to see Perez close that gap even further, if maybe potentially even manage to get ahead of us before we head to the Mexican Grand Prix, his home race. But Checo is on a charge, and that result last time really helped him. But great to see Norris last time get P3. A fantastic quali from the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc. But in the end, it was a man who was at a team that really struggled in qualifying who took the podium position. P3 there for him. 28 points. Now, he's still quite a chunk off the 2 Ferraris, but looking pretty strong after that result. First podium of the season. Charles Leclerc still yet to take a podium this season after his fantastic season last time, but currently sits on 40 points. Been very consistent so far, I have to say. Sainz was up there, starting to get some good points. Ricciardo was in the points. Gasly in the points too. And the man who rounded out the points, though, was Antonio Giovinazzi. Took Alfa Romeo's first point of the season and first point of the career mode. Fantastic work from him to get that point last time out. They are off the mark here, but looking at the bigger picture in terms of the championship, we have a decent lead over Checo Perez. He is catching us up, though. Verstappen just about still in it to fight us for the championship. Hamilton and Bottas separated by 2 points in P4 and 5, look pretty much out of it. Then the rest, Charles Leclerc is at the top of that little group. I say it's a little group, it's about half of the grid at the moment. He leads Seb Vettel, still going strong there. He hasn't scored since that podium at France, but those early results keeping him strong in the standings. Carlos Sainz on the same points as him. He's looking to catch up to his teammate. Lance Stroll sits on 28 ahead of Lando Norris, who also sits on 28. He's making a resurgence. Then Alonso sits ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, the Aussie, with 25 points ahead of Pierre Gasly and my teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Basically, the conclusion is that the McLarens and the Ferraris making their way back up the order in the standings, but still not exactly that great. And that's pretty obvious for McLaren in the Constructors. P5, only 3 points ahead of AlphaTauri. Interestingly, Stroll outscoring teammate Gasly at this stage. But Red Bull looking firm for the Constructors at the moment, ahead of Mercedes. That lead is by 39 points. Could still be closed in, but it's going to be quite difficult. We are looking pretty solid for P3. The best of the rest at the moment is Ferrari. They are ahead of McLaren, who are just ahead of AlphaTauri. Aston Martin lead Alpine in the battle for 7th, and Alfa Romeo sit in 9th with a solitary point. But as you can see, the championship fight is heating up, and it is suddenly looking interesting all over the field, especially when you get into that gulf of cars from 6th down to 14th, especially with Ricciardo being 12th, Norris just 10th, and really Vettel, Stroll still sat there in the top 10. So really great work from them. We've got quite a bit of R&D to do and things like that. We're going to renew our sponsor with Slingshot Fuel. You can see that there. But at the moment, we are looking all right with the engine heading into this weekend pretty much. 62% on the CE, bit of a risk to keep that. I don't know how many races we've done with that. Still got a fresh unit there. I think we're going to take another grid penalty this time out, because this being at 56% is potentially still usable. We want a fresh unit there. Yeah, we're going to take a CE penalty this weekend. Only a 5-place grid penalty, sorry, there. But that means we shouldn't have to take any penalties at Jeddah. And, of course, before that, at Mexico. That's the plan. I think the energy store should be pretty comfortable for one more Grand Prix. And then the rest of the components looking fine. So we probably will take a CE change heading into this week. And in terms of the R&D, I did actually, last race weekend, change my mind. I have not gone to redevelop the master cylinder brake upgrades just yet. In fact, I went straight in and rushed for the major brake disc width upgrade, because that, providing it works and we get it in, doesn't fail, will be in before the Belgian Grand Prix.
Issue on the production line earlier this week. So the entire development package for this weekend.
Thank you, Andrea. Don't exactly know what that's for, but that's lovely.
Finally, some good news. It's entirely up to you how we handle this.
Finally, some good news, mate. Sounds like we've had an absolute disaster recently. It hasn't been that bad, I have to say. But Tsunoda have been putting in a tremendous amount of work recently. We worry this may lead to burnout. Should we send them on a spa day? Accept, increase focus. Decline, increase experience. To be honest with you, I want the focus to go up.
I know these kind of decisions can be challenging, but I think you made the right call.
It's a difficult one, but for me, I think definitely the focus is pivotal. I think the focus is pivotal. 93 focus is going to really, really help him out, especially when people like Verstappen are quite low on focus. Ricciardo, not that great. Gasly, look at Stroll, Giovinazzi, Schwartzman, a few drivers there quite low on their focus. So those guys aren't looking that great. We're going to head to Will Buxton's interview. We had a press conference here last season around this sort of area. Let's see if we get some good questions today.
And I've got to say, an awful lot's changed since we were last here.
You said that last time.
With some questions. Big
Dive
news
in.
for your team recently,
Yeah.
with that surprise cash injection
There's
from your
actually
sponsor.
a lake next to
Will
it, so
provide
feel
the
free to
push
dive
you
in.
need to get ahead of the competition.
Surprise cash injection. Exactly, yeah, we'll go with that.
In a recent radio interview, your teammate talked quite openly about their grueling routine. Are there any concerns
Really?
that you're pushing them too hard?
Because if I'm not mistaken, we gave him a spa day yesterday, so We'll say he's confident they can handle the extra pressure.
We've heard rumours that your engineers and teammates have had a difference of opinion on where you focus your development efforts. As someone with experience as both a team manager and a driver, how do you tackle disagreements like this?
These kind of disagreements are healthy. Yes, we'll go with that. That makes the team sound good. Basically. Oh, all the
A
parts like
recent
that.
survey found that your staff have the highest employee
Oh,
satisfaction
right.
of all
Right,
the
so they're
F1 teams.
arguing.
That's
Sonoda's
quite the
complaining about
accolade.
the workload but
In
got
your
Spa Day.
opinion, what
And
makes
now
you
we've got the
best
highest
team to
employee
work for in Formula One?
satisfaction. We've invested a lot in our facilities to make sure it's just a great place to work, but with an eye towards employee well-being. Yeah.
Sources inside your team have described the environment as
This is a
with
joke.
growing concerns about how
This
much
is a
your staff are
joke.
under
Sorry,
deadlines.
it's
Care to
got
comment?
the highest employment satisfaction. Now you're complaining that there's too much pressure on our staff. Sorry, mate, Will Buxton, you're talking absolute terrible. It's like your drive to survive, isn't it? If you finish first, you win the race. It's that stupid. I think it's very much business as usual,
It's been
mate.
wonderful to spend some time with you. Best of luck.
Does not make you talking rubbish. That would be really helpful. But let's head back to the team headquarters. Let's continue with the R&D before quali. Just got to wait for it to load. It's rather annoying. Right, let's continue along. We do not have enough R&D just yet. We are saving up in terms of the money for potentially looking at a different teammate for next season. Are we going to get these upgrades in?
Our new parts have been
Yeah,
fitted
we've
without
got an
issue.
upgrade in the
They'll run the car ready for
durability,
the next race with
which
you.
is going to help us. We're right on the back of Mercedes and Red Bull. Whoa! Look at that order. Where did Alpine come from? They've jumped ahead of McLaren, AlphaTauri and Aston Martin. Wow. Don't know how that happened, but they might have been storing up a lot of upgrades to bring in. We're going to get that sorted. That'll be in for the Mexican Grand Prix guaranteed. Big question is, can we get in the brake disc width
Hey, boss.
upgrades?
I think we
No.
could better manage our time by
We are
organising
going to
some
be
activities.
given
Go to the activities screen to see what we
another
have available. We've got an issue with
department
lock your
event,
input on.
taking a few all-nighters, but the department have hit their development deadline. Taking a real effort. This one was especially difficult to drag over the line. I think we should definitely consider some kind of recognition for the effort they've been putting in, maybe a party or something. We can't afford to lose the morale. We work in the chassis department a lot. Gonna go with the
Stepping in and
cash, a
helping
little bit
handle
off that. I think that's okay. We're still decent on cash. Yes! Come on. The brake disc width is in, and that puts us right with Mercedes and Red Bull. Mercedes now ahead of Red Bull. McLaren and Ferrari are catching up. McLaren now ahead of Ferrari. Alpine have dropped down a teeny little bit, but the order is looking fantastic. Do want to look at some of these upgrades. Maybe the ultimate drag reduction upgrade or downforce. Definitely want to be having a look at these, like Halo. That's a pivotal one. So we are going to be having a little bit of a look at the aero department to push on that. We are going to start to leave it a little bit in terms of the chassis because we've got barely any upgrades left to do in there. We are also going to be focusing on the engine power a little bit, get some more upgrades in because we are near the bottom of the order, but not too far off. So that is certainly the plan, to have a little bit of a look at powertrain and aero in the coming parts of the season. Take a little bit of a break off chassis with ourselves investing so heavily in that so far compared to other teams. But really great to get that upgrade in. That's going to massively help us heading into this weekend with ourselves continuing to be closed in by Checo Perez in the championship. But we've had a look at what happened last time out. We've renewed our sponsor. We've sorted out the engine problems or anything like that we need to have a little look at. In terms of the departments, we got that R&D upgrade sorted. We're not making any upgrades there, of course, because I am looking to save up for someone. Sonoda's been good this season, but he hasn't really brought us what we're looking for in terms of results, so we are actually saving up for maybe the likes of Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, because those guys, once we apply these extra pace and awareness and racecraft and experience, those guys are going to be almost 100 rated, definitely around 95. So that's the target for the rest of the season. So we're not going to focus on too many upgrades at the moment, especially with Spec 3 Aero and Spec 3 Chassis. We might want to upgrade a bit to get Spec 2 Durability at some point, just in case one of those drivers does end up wanting Spec 2 and Durability, but we are going to be saving up. So, of course, we're going to have a look at the R&D graph in a second. Before we do, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But we're going to head over there and have a look at that now. You've got to love that increase in performance for Alpine. Gosh, their team must have been working their socks off from the Hungarian Grand Prix to the Belgian Grand Prix, because that is quite a steep mountain of improvement. They have absolutely launched themselves ahead of Alfa Romeo, Aston Martin and Alpha Tauri. Look at that gap there, but towards the top, Mercedes leading Red Bull, and ourselves, the gap there between Mercedes and Red Bull is pretty decent, I have to say. Red Bull have a little drop in performance. Mercedes are ahead of them for the first time since Spain. That was round number 3 in this season, but Mercedes looking a bit stronger than Red Bull. We're pretty much identical with Red Bull there, so it's not going to come down to the better car. It's going to be me versus Checo, pretty much. Not too much of a difference between the car qualities. Then, still quite a chunky gap back to McLaren and Ferrari, pretty much side by side. There's no difference really between them two. McLaren have come steaming back into the picture in terms of fighting Ferrari. So those two are going to be really close. I expect very close battle between them in quali and, of course, the race. But then Alpine have made massive inroads on those guys. Just a chunk behind there. And Alonso, Ocon, they could well be getting in the mix for Q3. But, of course, those guys just behind McLaren's and the Ferraris. It's then a healthy gap back to Alpha Tauri, who are going to be a bit annoyed, dropping down to P7 there. A bit disappointing for them, a bit frustrating, and the gap to McLaren and Ferrari is quite massive there, I have to say. Now, they are, of course, behind Alpine by quite a chunk. They are still ahead of Alfa Romeo by a healthy amount. They've also made gains on Aston Martin, who sit in between the two teams. Yes, we have 4 teams, beginning with A, that's Alpine, AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo, in that order. Then, as always, quite a big gap back to Williams, though, who have made massive improvements like Alpine. A huge steep mountain, might have even made more upgrades there from Hungary to Spa, to go from chunk behind Haas to being a chunk ahead of Haas. So Williams bring themselves back ahead of Haas in the picture at the back. But a summary of that, Mercedes ahead of Red Bull, looking a little bit stronger. We have pretty much identical performance to them. Then a chunk back, McLaren and Ferrari side by side being chased down by Alpine. Small gap back to them. Then reasonably big gap back to Alpha Tauri, who lead Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo by a little bit there. Then a long way back to Williams, who have made massive improvements and are now ahead of Haas. But certainly looking very interesting in the R&D, should create for an exciting quali and race. And actually, I'm really looking forward to this one. Wet and dry in quali and the race. We don't actually have the weather forecast just yet, so we'll have a look at that in quali. But that's going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting with quali and race both having wet conditions, but also dry conditions. How much of it's going to be wet, how much is going to be dry? We've got to answer that question for both quali and race, but it's going to make it very, very interesting heading into this race weekend. But of course, quali in today's video. And why not head there now and we can see how wet it's actually going to be. It certainly isn't raining in the first part of qualifying here. However, it will be later on today. That is planned for Q2. Of course, if we do get there, we will probably be racing in the wet. 30 minutes time and there will be light rain, which means it's very, very likely that we will have wet, well, intermediates on in that session, maybe even to full wet in Q3, as in 60 minutes time. It is going to be absolutely bucketing it down. But once again, we've had a streak of tracks where it's wet. We started it at the Austrian GP, we then continued with the British Grand Prix, we continued into the Hungarian Grand Prix, and now the 4th time in a row we're going to have a wet weather affected weekend. It's certainly going to make it an interesting one. Robert Schwartzman out on track, Bottas heading out, Raikkonen heading out of the pits now, Hamilton on track, Schwartzman's there. We are going to join all of them on our first set of softs here in Q1. If you've got an eagle eye and you're looking at the top of the screen, yes, that is our CE change. We've also changed the gearbox for the last few races of the season. That had done 7 races already, I think, without being able to replace it or something like that. Well, we had 7 races already as Hamilton goes quickest, so I was able to replace that with no grid penalty. Away we go for our first lap here. Wanted to get out early. With it being a longer track, it's hard to fit in a lot of laps in the session, of course. Lap times in the 1-minute 40s compared to somewhere like Red Bull Ring, where they are under 1-minute 10s. So, of course, that's quite a long time. 1-minute 43.4 for Valtteri Bottas, as we look still a little bit unstable in this My Team car. The chassis might be pretty good, but it still does feel a little bit slippery at times. Not as much downforce as the likes of the Mercs and the Red Bulls, and that's almost our downfall with the car. We're so great in the chassis department, but in terms of the body round it, it isn't as fantastic. Yes, we've got quite a lot of upgrades in the aero department, but certainly nowhere near as many compared to the chassis department if we compare ourselves to the other teams. But here we are, going reasonably okay on our first lap in Q1. Perez, 1-minute 42.9, our championship rival, absolutely flying. It's a pivotal one for him this weekend. I don't know if he's going to be taking any grid penalties at any point this season. Probably is going to have to, and if he does have to take some this weekend, that could leave us with a lovely looking lead into Mexico, maybe even the ability to be able to win it. Let's not forget, one of us has the lead into Mexico, one of us can actually win it. It would take, though, pretty much you'd have to win, and then the other person would have to DNF, as you can see. We're playing the curbs a little bit off the start of quali here on these softs. Tyre wear reasonably high, of course, now at 6%, but it is a long lap, so out lap, and of course on track ticks, well, P5, I'll be very happy with that. Hamilton's lap was certainly not competitive there for him, a really, really poor one.
We've only got 2 laps.
Seb Vettel, P13, are you going to let me through, Seb? Are you going to let me through? Yes, you are, thank you, Seb. G'day, mate. Great to see. He'll be racing with his jelly beans after getting the cryptocurrency overtaking award in real life, but I don't know whether we'll do this lap or not, to be honest with you. I think we're pretty much safe, but I'm a bit shocked to see Alonso P3. Great lap for him. Maybe the Mercedes not showing what they can actually do, because we know they're top of the R&D now, so sandbagging a bit in Q1, not showing what they can actually do, and then we're going to go and shock the Red Bulls in Q2 and 3. That may be the plan. Right, we've just chucked it in the wall at no name. I'm probably just going to return to the pits quietly and replace my front wing. Sorry there, bit worried I was going to take Vettel out, so dodged out the way, but we are going to return to the pits for a fresh front wing. Times continue to flood in a little bit here, but we are looking pretty comfortable there in P9. Before we have a look at everyone else, in terms of the drop zone, Latifi right up there in P17, great work from him, but well, it's now Mick Schumacher right up there in P17. 2.4 seconds though, and we are 6/10 behind the leader, so we are going to be fine. We can sit back and relax in Q1 for once. That's going to be nice. But Perez, our championship rival, is absolutely flying at the moment, blistering pace off the start here at the Belgian GP qualifying. 1-minute 42.9, and judging on the conditions that are coming soon, that could well be the best quali time that we actually get to see. Daniel Ricciardo P2 with Lando Norris P5. McLaren maybe looking a bit stronger this week than they did at Hungary, of course, a better car. Both of them ahead of the Ferraris. They're looking really great to try and claw in that gap in the constructors, with Alonso though P3 in that Alpine, and I know that Alpine's improving, but he is taking that above and beyond. Fantastic work. Only 1.5 tenths of Perez, who's in that fantastic Red Bull. He's ahead of both Mercs. He's ahead of Max Verstappen. He's ahead of ourselves, both Ferraris, Lando Norris. a list of fantastic drivers. Probably going to take myself out of that, but wow. Fernando, P3. Hopefully he can make it through to Q3 later in qualifying. But Verstappen looking a bit weaker than his teammate. A theme we've seen so far this season. He's also, though, seemed to have managed to collect quite a bit of bad luck compared to his Mexican teammate. Lando Norris, of course, there, P5, going strong ahead of Carlos Sainz. The leading of the two Ferraris isn't looking too fantastic here for Ferrari. Charles Leclerc certainly going to have to go again, probably in P12. Sainz in P6. Those two really not looking too comfortable at the moment. They're struggling compared to the McLarens, and this could certainly be a turning point with the McLarens catching up in the R&D. So hopefully the Ferraris can get that sorted a little bit, but Sainz P6 and Leclerc really struggling down in P12. Those guys with plenty of work to do and plenty of problems to fix. Similarly, for the Mercs, supposedly the fastest car on the grid this weekend, but still both of them behind both Red Bulls. Bottas only P7, Hamilton a disappointing P11. Don't know if there was some sort of mad sector time. Hamilton was okay-ish in the first sector, wasn't that fantastic. He was okay-ish in the middle sector, wasn't that fantastic, and not really that fantastic in the final sector either. So really disappointing lap there from Lewis Hamilton. No real sector he got messed up in, neither really for Valtteri Bottas. So those two just genuinely really slow at the moment, maybe saving the best for later, certainly what you want to do, but the Mercs struggling. Our team certainly isn't. P8 and P9, Yuki leading me. Great to see him up there in the mix with ourselves. We're pretty comfortable. Ocon, not as good as his teammate, but still really comfortable in that Alpine this weekend. P10 as it stands. Gasly is the man in P30, the Frenchman. That's pretty good considering where that AlphaTauri is now. He's ahead of his teammate. Great to see Lance right there with him in terms of pace, of course. 2/10 behind Pierre. Those guys will have to go again, but they are looking pretty comfy at the moment. I have to just point it out, though. Esteban Ocon, best lap, 1 minute. Not 1 minute, sorry, wait, it is 1 minute 43.662, but had the fastest final sector. That Alpine flying around that third part of the track. Vettel, P15, he's looking pretty struggling this weekend, I have to say. It's not looking that great for him. He is behind, of course, Lance Stroll there in the AlphaTauri. He's going to have to go again, maybe. But actually, when you look at the gap back to Schwartzman, that's still pretty big. Russell, though, Mr. Saturday, did great in real life here. And he's doing the same again. P16 at the moment for him. Fantastic work in his Williams. He'll have to probably go again to make sure, but looking great there. Then, in the drop zone, Schwartzman's going to have to improve along with Giovinazzi, Schumacher, Latifi, Raikkonen and Mazepin. Schwartzman way off his teammate. He'll be looking to try and get a bit closer to Seb with his lap time. Try and get out of Q1. Giovinazzi, fantastic last time out. Stronger than his teammate, but struggling a little bit down there in P18. Schumacher, doing pretty well. P19, just ahead of Nicholas Latifi. Raikkonen really struggling down there in P21, and then way off the pace. A whole second off Raikkonen is Nikita Mazepin at the back of the field, but those guys are going to have to go again. We are not. And now we can head to the results of Q1. Concerningly, I didn't think we would, but we've actually got a 10-place grid penalty. So I'd done 7 out of 6, what it said on the graphic for the gearbox, but we seem to have been given a 5-place grid penalty anyway. So we're going to be starting a tad further back than we expected, but still, quali is reasonably important. We are through, as you can see, with it raining behind us, no one has improved, so the order is exactly the same as before. So the same sort of concepts up top, with McLaren stronger than Ferrari, Red Bull stronger than Mercedes. We're looking okay-ish with our teammate Tsunoda. Alonso great in P3. Same sort of themes there. AlphaTauri's getting through, Vettel getting through. Mr. Saturday gets through, but because of the rain, no one can improve. And Robert Schwartzman is out in Q1 in his Aston Martin. Quite a chunk off his teammate. P17, not too bad for him, but a little bit disappointing. Ahead of Antonio Giovinazzi, not really getting the pace he had at Hungary. Only P18, but comfortably ahead of his teammate in terms of positions. It's really, really close from P18 to P21. Schumacher sits P19 for Haas He is going to start there before grid penalties for everyone are applied thanks to component changes. But Mick, in his ass, is looking pretty decent there. 1 minute 45.3. Best lap time. P19. And the Haas is weaker than the Williams, so great to see him ahead of Nicholas Latifi's P20. A bit disappointing compared to his teammate, but could have been worse. And he is ahead of a struggling Kimi Raikkonen. As we've said, quite a chunk off his teammate, maybe as season start. Well, this season starting to drop off a bit. Potentially might retire at the end of this season. We don't know. But Mazepin, as pretty much always, rounding out the field in P22. It's looking spicy for Q2, I have to say, in these wet, likely to be intermediate conditions. They're probably going to get worse as we go along, so the best lap times are going to have to be set earlier in the session. But we are through. Yuki is through too. We've lost in Q1 Robert Schwartzman, Antonio Giovinazzi, Mick Schumacher, Nicholas Latifi, Kimi Raikkonen and Nikita Mazepin. That's both Haas's, both Alfa Romeos, a Williams and an Aston Martin. But now, with no changes in the order, it is time to charge into Q2. Q2 is here. Let's have a look at the forecast, and it is currently raining. No surprises there on the intermediates, but 10 minutes time, it's going to dry out, and 15 minutes, which means that patch should be long enough to be able to get onto the slicks. So actually, I'm not going to go out till the end of the session. There's no real point, I have to say. Alonso might be heading out on his outlap in his Alpine on the Inters, but I don't want to join him. Certainly don't want to join any of them, because actually we might as well just wait, save a set of intermediates, don't burn a set out, then go out on the slicks in 10 to 15 mins towards the end of the session. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Stroll is joining Alonso. We are not going to join those guys, seeing as there's not much more for us to do for the first 10 minutes of qualifying. Let's have a look at the race weather. It's going to start off a bit cloudy. We're going to get a bit of sunshine through there. Definitely going to start moving up north. Maybe head a bit towards northeast. No, I'm just trying to talk absolute rubbish now. We will get a bit of rain, though, later on. 45 mins in, it will be raining. We will be on the intermediates, likely. 60 mins in, it will be full wet conditions for that. So whether we'll manage to get onto the Inters or not, I don't know. It could come right in the 44th minute of it, or it could come in the 31st. We could end up having a stint on the Inters or not, or it could certainly be quite borderline, and the race could literally be decided on pitting or not. Alonso, Leclerc, Stroll, Tsunoda, Sainz, Russell, Norris are all out on track at the moment. The McLaren there, Papaya Orange, Russell through Rouge and Radion, doing a bit better than Norris did in real life last season. Bahrain, of course, pretty soon. Really excited for that in the 2022 season. Also can't wait for the 2022 game to come out. Gotta hype it up. But these guys are not going to be setting fantastic lap times in these conditions. We are going to sit there, save a set of intermediates, and then go out when it really, really matters in Q2. It seems it has certainly dried up here. About 6 minutes to go in the session. Checo Perez out on medium, so's Bottas, Gasly on softs at the moment. Those three at the top of the charts, they have taken advantage of better conditions, but you can see constantly improving, clearly out on track. We've got quickest those on the Inters, 7.1, then Ocon, Ricciardo a bit quicker, Gasly a bit quicker, then Bottas and Perez. Track constantly improving. We're going to join these guys in a second. It does seem, once again, Leclerc struggling a little bit there. Vettel quite far down. Norris and Sainz pretty close together. Of course, Ricciardo on the softs. Now, Hamilton ahead of Verstappen. Interesting to see. Perez ahead of Bottas. But really, none of that matters. We are going to join those guys in a minute or two for the slicks runs on what will be softs in Q2. We are now out on track on the slicks, and oh wait, did I see some droplets? Yes, it is actually raining a little bit, drizzling I have to say. It shouldn't affect the grip too much, however if it does continue towards the end of the lap, the bus stop chicane might not be the driest of corners. I've got to say, Vettel in front in his Aston Martin, he's probably not going to be getting out of quali here. I can't really see that happening. It would be great if he could, but that Aston Martin not exactly looking like the best of cars at the moment, so definitely if he could get top 12, that would be really fantastic after a bit of a disappointing Hungarian GP weekend. In terms of the back of this long snake, that is a Ferrari. My teammate towards the back, but the rain really coming down as we complete Sector 1. Quickest in Sector 1. I mean, there aren't really going to be many quicker times at the moment thanks to the conditions, but certainly we'll take that. Sector 1, certainly my forte round here. Sector 2, the weakest sector, probably because it's technical. And then, of course, Sector 3, I'm okay at. But I really do enjoy Sector 1, probably why it's one of my quickest. But, of course, you've got the classic corners of Eau Rouge and Radion. And then the first corner, got to love that. Really nice section. Yes, only one braking zone really in it, isn't it? But, of course, unless it's in the wet, then you probably want to dab on the brakes, I'm guessing, for Eau Rouge and Radion, unless you're being a bit risky, but we should be going a tad quicker than Seb Vettel here in Q2, purple in the middle sector. That won't last for long, I've got to say, but we are actually catching up to him, and I don't want my lap to be compromised by a reasonably slow Aston Martin. However, we should be pretty okay here. Towards the end of the lap we come, and in fact we could lose a 10th or two because of him, but it's lovely to know that we're actually not going to be slowest here. We are going to be quicker than Vettel. He goes quickest. We retake P1. Are we going to have enough to get through here? We're not going to be able to really go again in this session. I mean, we can. Don't really see the point. P3, Ocon is slower. Leclerc's gone quicker. That puts us down to P4. And we're forced to back off because of Vettel in front. So that is our lap gone. Are we going to be safe? Still plenty of cars left to go. Down to P7 with the Merc going. My teammate still to go. There's a Red Bull. We can only afford to drop 2 places here. Yuki only P10. That's surely out. We're down to P9. Will we be demoted by the McLaren? Yes, we will. Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry, Ocon. I'm going very slowly looking at the times. Is it going to be enough? Are we going to lose out to the final Ferrari? Yes, we are. Oh, Carlos sneaks in front of us into P10. Sorry, Merc. No, I'm going quite slowly. Oh, what a shame. We have just missed out on running in Q3. Oh, gosh. Well, I have certainly loved every bit of that Q2 session. Probably the best Q2 session of the season so far. So intense. And you know what? I'm just going to savour this little bit of final running round Spa. Absolutely got to love Spa, haven't you? Really fun track. Technically, we could have gone again, but of course we couldn't because Vettel kind of slowed us up a bit. But P11 is not too bad. We do get to start on a fresh set of softs, of course, for tomorrow's race. We will have those grid penalties, so definitely worth it. Yuki sadly didn't make it through. Ocon didn't. I know Vettel didn't. Be interesting to see who else did, but we're going to return to the pits now. Wow, that was an intense end to Q2 there, and we missed out by under a 10th to Carlos Sainz. Just gave through in his Ferrari. We are out though in Q2. As I've said, not too bad. We get the free tyre choice. We are taking those grid penalties. So, to be honest, P10 is a really solid result for us in Q2, especially with those slippery conditions. Still wasn't perfect out on track. Certainly wasn't. But you have a look at who else has gone out. No real surprises there in Q2. We are out in P11, followed by Esteban Ocon. Looking good in his Alpine. Great to see him up in the top 12. Of course, his teammate is through to Q3. Great to see there for Fernando. But Esteban, P12, growing confidence in that Alpine. Not too bad for him today. Neither really for Yuki. I mean, really, where is the car? It's ahead of the McLarens and the Ferraris. It's right with the Red Bulls. He should be fighting with Verstappen and Perez and Bottas and Hamilton with where the car is. But it really has been a bit of a flop of a season for the Japanese driver. It's been a bit of a shame for Yuki not to be able to perform at the sort of level we wanted him to be able to perform at. But it could have been worse, I suppose. P13, he is ahead of Stroll, Vettel and Russell. That is the consolation. Stroll, quite a chunk off his teammate, I got to say, nearly a whole second there. P14 for Lance. It's been an okay season. He's got a decent amount of points. He's got more than his teammate, and he's executed those one-stop strategies perfectly, really. But the low focus has just led to him not really being competitive in terms of pure pace. especially, of course, in quali. A bit disappointed with P14, though. Similar for Seb Vettel and his Aston Martin. P15, and I know that's probably where the car is, to be honest. Maybe P14? But it's been multiple disappointing quali results for Seb Vettel at this rate, you know. I don't think... Did I say it down in the video? What was it? He hasn't scored since France, was it, for Vettel? Or that was someone else, but really, it's a bit disappointing for Seb. Such a fantastic driver is the German, and best up of 1 minute 44, 3:07. These in P15, another really quite disappointing result for him. And George Russell is the man rounding it all out. No surprises there in that really uncompetitive Williams, but great to see him in Q3. Yes, really off the pace with a 1 minute 45 lap time, but gave it a good crack in Q2. Great to see him in Q2. Great to see him getting out of Q1 earlier. But if we have a look at the top 10, Verstappen, P1 ahead of Hamilton, Perez and Bottas. And of course, Q3, I do believe, will be in the wet conditions, so that could all change around. But really interesting to see there. The stronger of the Merc drivers on general pace so far this season is P4. The stronger of the Red Bull drivers on general pace so far this season is P3. So very interesting there. Verstappen looking really decent. Hamilton looking really decent. Those two looking to really try and launch a bit of a title fight. And with ourselves, P11 taking a 10-place grid penalties, 10 places worth of grid penalties, of course, with component changes, it's going to be an interesting one. But to be honest, I think, I could be quite wrong, but I really do think, and if you have a look at it, you know, this is their opportunity. One of those guys is going to probably potentially take 20 points on us, something like that. Of course, that's me suggesting that we're going to get in the points. If we don't get in the points, and one of them wins 25 points on us. So it really is going to be pivotal. Those guys, though, so close, within 2.5 tenths, that it's all going to be super close in Q3. It really, really is. Then, of course, the race, someone's going to have a mechanical failure, someone's going to get a good start, someone's going to get a poor start. You really don't know, but early signs of Verstappen and Hamilton looking a bit stronger than their teammates of Perez and Bottas, my rival, though, still looking pretty decent up there in P3. McLaren's looking strong. Lando Norris just off the back of the top four, motivated clearly after that Hungarian GP podium last time out. P3 for him. The McLaren's looking strong in qualifying, and he's only just off the back of the front four, so wouldn't be surprised if he's fighting for P5. Best of the rest today, of course, in Q3, which we won't get to see, sadly, because we have just missed out on it. But great work from Lando. Also, similarly, for Fernando Alonso, the second weakest car in the top 10. And that is a lovely lap to take. P6 is ahead of both Ferraris and Daniel Ricciardo and Pierre Gasly. Alonso really, really looking fantastic. Hopefully he stays with us in F1 for a couple more seasons in this career mode, of course, because he's really starting to enjoy driving that Alpine quite clearly. P6 for him, only 6 tenths off the leader in that Alpine, of course, for him. Alonso really fantastic work, taking advantage of that stronger car this weekend through to Q3, and hopefully he can capitalise on that in the race tomorrow. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, P7, the Monegasque is through, and for once in quali, looking stronger than Sainz. He's been a bit weaker than Sainz so far in Spa, but he's looking stronger. Still, though, quite a chunk off Lando Norris, 3 tenths there, and only just in front of Ricciardo and his teammate, of course, Carlos Sainz. So I have to say, maybe Norris is going to be making big inroads on the 3 of them, potentially. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see until the race and, of course, the results of Q3. But Charles Leclerc, P7 for Ferrari. Teammate, Sainz, P10. So once again, the opposite of what we saw last time out at Hungary. Ferrari struggling compared to McLaren. Pretty obvious with that one there. But Pierre Gasly, P8. That Alpha Tauri is weaker than the Alpine. It isn't that strong. I think it was the, what did we say it was? 6th or 7th strongest car on the grid. It really is quite a mediocre looking car at the moment, but Gasly out driving it ahead of Ricciardo and Sainz. Fantastic to see from the Frenchman. He's P8 and will go through to Q3 in a pretty sweet position, I've got to say. Great to see him in Q3 and of course really excelling in that AlphaTauri. Daniel Ricciardo's got to be a bit disappointed once again. Quite a chunk behind his teammate. It's been a common theme and it continues to happen again for Danny Rick. It's got to be frustrating for him, but, you know, he just doesn't have the pace compared to Lando, and that is quite a frequent occurrence. P9 for him, great to see him through, and then, of course, Carlos Sainz scraping through. Ferrari might be using a bit of their luck this weekend at Spa. Don't really have the pace, and Carlos just getting through. Of course, we are out in Q2. But as I said, not all too bad. It should be an exciting race tomorrow. P11 for ourselves. We also lose Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, my teammate, Lance Stroll, Sebastian Vettel and George Russell, which means we lose the second of the two Williams. We also lose the second of the two Aston Martins, one of the two AlphaTauris, both the Dynamo Mechanics F1 team cars, and one of the two Alpines, of course, with Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, Bottas, Norris, Alonso, Leclerc, Gasly, Ricciardo and Carlos Sainz all making it through to Q3. We don't get to see the results of that until we get to see the grid, which already has the grid penalties applied. So that will look very interesting. Of course, ourselves taking grid penalties, so we'll probably be fighting from a bit further back, but it should be a really fun, dry, so maybe, we don't know, a bit of wet towards the end of the race. So make sure you check out for the race video in this series at Spa. There you have it, ourselves, Ocon, Tsunoda, Stroll, Vettel and Russell out in Q2. Bit of a shame that we couldn't make it through to Q3, but a really fun second part to qualifying here today. All to play for between the Mercs and the Red Bulls for pole, of course, and then McLaren looking stronger than Ferrari. What can Alonso do? Maybe Gasly too. That is pretty much it for today's video, setting up nicely for the incoming race. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time in the series for the Belgian Grand Prix.